G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jayzcee, this is Dylan. Today we're in Dylan's 2005 Ford XR6. Dylan, do you want to tell us a little bit about your beast?
Yeah, so it's a 2005 Mark II XR6 NA.
Awesome, man. How long you had it for?
A couple months.
That's awesome, man. So today we're going to do a pros and cons video on your car today, and you're going to help us out with that. Obviously, you being the owner, you'll know a bit more about it. So Dylan, one of the pros I found was that this is a rear-wheel drive, and for me, I drive my main car the front-wheel drive, right? And a rear-wheel drive car, I think, is better in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to things like tyre wear. In a front-wheel drive car like my Renault, you've got, you know, all the steering and all the power going into the front wheels, which means you get uneven tyre wear, right?
Yep.
When I changed my tyres like 2 weeks ago, there was still 50% tread left on the back, nothing on the front. You don't have that problem so much with a rear-wheel drive car, do you?
Not as such, as long as you're driving it, you know, kind of responsibly.
Well, yeah, you know, obviously we are responsible drivers. I think everyone knows that.
But other than that, like tyre wear as such, you know, is definitely a lot better because you're not having to have, you know, your front wheels do everything.
That's it, you know, your front wheels in a rear wheel drive car, they're just doing the steering, all the power's going to the rear wheels there. And you're right, as long as you're driving it normally, you should get a fairly even tyre wear.
Absolutely.
That's it, whereas it doesn't really matter, you know, if you've got a powerful front wheel drive car, like which mine is, then unfortunately those tyres are going to wear unevenly, so that's definitely a pro for this car.
Absolutely.
You want to tell us a little bit about the engine in this?
Yeah, so it's a 6-cylinder 4-litre, naturally aspirated.
Straight 6?
Straight 6.
Straight 6, not a V6, which is interesting because Holden, which in Australia is like the rival, was rather the rival to Ford, they released the SV6, which was a V6. And that had, at the time that this was released in 2005, it actually had more power but less torque. So this has more torque than the SV6.
Correct.
You want to tell us a little bit about the sound system?
Yeah, so this has the premium sound. So it comes standard with a colour display, which is also bigger than the just your standard sound. Awesome. As well as it also comes standard with tweeters and a sub.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, premium sound. And I'm also noticing as well, man, this is a really like smooth ride. Like it feels solid, it's smooth, it's not, you don't hear a lot of the road, whereas like in some cars like my MkII, obviously it's a soft top, you hear every single bump in the road, you hear like the wind hits the car hard. This is really comfortable and really quiet, man.
Definitely a smooth drive, which is one of the reasons that I actually decided to buy it. Was I took it for a test run and just couldn't believe how smooth it just drove. You know, you barely feel anything. You know, as rugged as the car is as well, because they're kind of bulky and rugged, you just don't feel it as you drive it.
Yeah, it's certainly a comfortable drive, man. Absolutely. Now, I was having a look on the outside of your car. There's a bit of clear coat breaking down. Is that a common thing with the Fords?
Definitely. So especially on like the spoilers, as you would have noticed, they do tend to have a bit of a clear coat kind of problem. But I mean, in all, that's fairly minimal compared to some other cars with what you can have.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it is, we got to consider this is 2020 now, it's 2000, it's a 15-year-old car.
Oh, definitely. You know? And being an orange, which is a highly fadeable colour.
It's more susceptible to that damage, I believe, absolutely. And look, it's just on the spoiler that I really found that. That's a plastic. On all the metal and all the parts that matter, you know, you need the paint, obviously, to make sure that the metal doesn't rust. All the important parts are still painted and there's no signs of any damage there, which is pretty impressive for a 15-year-old car, which has done, you know, 130,000 kilometres.
Oh, absolutely. You know, like the paint, you know, after I gave it a proper good detail, just came up really nice. Really impressed with just how shiny it is, how clean it kind of come up.
Absolutely, it cleans up really well. One thing that I am a huge fan of in this car is there is a lot of space here, and that's mainly because this is a sedan. We're seeing less and less of these on the road, mainly because we're seeing less of these, especially in Australia, being built. You know, we had the Ford factory in, I believe it was Geelong, somewhere in Victoria. We had the Holden factory in Elizabeth in South Australia. They're both closed down now. They built some of the best sedans in the world, I think. And now with them gone, we're seeing people move to either, you know, small SUVs, large SUVs, utes, or, you know, small hatches or hot hatches, you know, and those just don't have, you know, the space that you get in a sedan. You know, I've got so much space here by my legs, but not only that, look at the rear seats. You could comfortably fit another 3 fully grown adults in those rear seats, no problem. Whereas, you know, in my car, the Renault, you need to have your legs chopped off to fit in the back. It's ridiculous. So in terms of comfortability, you know, you've got the ride, check. You've got the space, check. It's a comfortable car, man.
Definitely well built for, you know, being a passenger car, as they would call it.
Absolutely, yeah. But I guess, you know, it died because now everyone's getting sort of, you know, you used to have back in the day, you just have one car per family, right? So you had to have the sedan because everyone had to fit in the car. My family has 6 cars, you know? So you don't need that big sedan anymore because it's, you know, all you need is the driver, and you're not actually carrying anyone around, you know, during the week, even on the weekends. How often do you have a passenger in the car anymore?
Barely at all, to be honest. Like, I might take a parent around somewhere or something like that, but other than that, I drive it myself most of the time.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that's one of the reasons why sedans, you know, as much as I love them, they're amazing cars, why the sedan industry is sort of slowly dying out, especially in Australia, because people are moving to those hatches and stuff, because we're finding that, you know, you just need a comfortable driver's seat and a big boot, you know, that's what you need. And so, unfortunately, as an amazing car as this is, sedans, you know, they kind of died out. So this is one of the last great sedans that was built in Australia, the Mark II.
Absolutely, and I mean, like, it shows for itself just how well built and in mind it was for the people that were buying it.
And it was at one stage actually Australia's most sold and most popular car. There were no more like cars on the, well, no, let me reword that. This was the most common car on the road. You know, this was, for a period of time when Ford was still being built in Australia, the most common car on the road. What that means is that now when you buy these pre-owned, you know, if anything were to ever go wrong, which is highly unlikely because these are extremely reliable cars, if anything was to ever go wrong, finding spare parts for these things is not only easy, but cheap.
And I mean, that's one of the great things about it being built here in Australia.
Absolutely.
Is for the simple fact that you can get parts pretty easy for them.
Absolutely. And now, because Australia basically has no huge car manufacturing industry. I mean, we've got things like Elfin and Brabham, but those aren't mainstream car brands. This was, again, you know, one of the last cars to be built in Australia, one of the last models of cars to be built in Australia, and they're still everywhere, you know, like, just because Ford isn't building cars here anymore, it doesn't mean that these cars aren't around. So you'll always be able to find spare parts for these cars, man.
Absolutely, and I mean, you know, even as we noticed before, we had a ute drive past us, which was exactly the same colour as this and whatnot, and, you know, it does show that they're still around.
I want to talk a bit about your Prindle here, or the automatic transmission.
Yeah.
Now, this is a 4-speed, not a 5-speed. When I was driving, I drove around an automatic Skyline, and that was a 4-speed. It felt for me that there was gear missing, like there was just something missing, and it would lack power in some of those higher gears there. You know, it was usually pretty good in first and second. When it hits third and fourth, it kind of feels like there should be another gear in there to get that gear ratio right. Do you find that issue with this?
I mean, going, you know, on freeways, when it hits fourth, it's kind of like that, but through kind of first to third, you know, you don't really have an issue with power. It is a lot lower down, which is if where you were to get the XR6 turbo model, that would then, you know, pick up that little bit of miss that you get.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and this still does have the sports auto, which is quite responsive actually. It was way more responsive than when I tested the sports auto in the stage here in the Skyline. So you've still got some control over the gears, which I think is pretty cool. But you did actually mention about the XR6 Turbo. This is just an XR6, so it is slightly more powerful and slightly, well, a lot better looking than just the Falcon base model that they sold at the same time, right? But it isn't quite as impressive or as powerful as, say, the XR6 Turbo models and the XR8 models that they released at the same time as well. Those are actually more powerful than this.
Oh, absolutely, and I mean, you know, that's just kind of where you got to go preferable choice. So I chose to go the NA because I'm using it as a daily at the moment.
Yeah.
So therefore, to me, it was just kind of, you know, why have the turbo if it's going to be a daily?
And one thing as well that I noticed, because I do drive a Renault myself, and we know that the interior in the Renaults and in pretty much any French car is probably among some of the worst interior you'll ever find in a car. But in this we find there is a lot of plastics around the place, like even on places where you wouldn't expect it, like the handbrake is plastic. Now the steering wheel and the gear shift, that's got leather on it, so that's fine. But On the other parts that you're touching, like the gear shift, that's plastic, and that just doesn't give you a nice feel, you know. And you want to be able to like have something that feels nice to drive, you know.
Yeah.
So look, not as bad as a Renault by any means, but there is still a lot of, you know, the plastic interior, which I think what Ford have done here is they focused more on the engine and the mechanics more than anything. It is a reliable car, and you know, this wasn't the most expensive car in the world either. You know, it was very affordable, which is why, you know, almost every Australian family's had one at some point. I think what they've tried to do is cut costs by using slightly cheaper materials. Honestly, not much of a niggle because the seats are still really nice. So what you're sitting in is fine. It's basically just more so for the driver, you know. What you're touching, the steering wheel, the handbrake, the shifter, you know, all those kinds of things. But it could be worse. Evidently, we've seen that in a Renault. But it's no European car, is it? It's no BMW in terms of interior luxury. But it's still fun to drive. It has no impact on the drive whatsoever, right?
Oh, none at all. And I mean, all the main parts that you touch are, you know, quite nice to touch. You know, they're not too plasticky as such. So it's more so just the things you don't really touch, but you see.
Yeah.
That kind of have that kind of feel and texture to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than that, the main things like the steering wheel is just, you know, it's real comfortable. Like, I don't have a steering wheel cover on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, some cars you touching your steering wheel and you go, no, I need a steering wheel cover.
Yeah, absolutely. You do get that, but more so in cheaper cars, I suppose. Now, this is the inner 4-year-old in me coming out. The seats in this are upholstered in the same colour as the outside of the car.
Correct.
How cool is that?
I actually, when I first saw it, that's one thing that grabbed my attention.
Yeah, yeah.
And after sending people, you know, photos as you do of, you know, the new car and whatnot, that's one thing that everyone went to, was the fact that, you know, it's upholstered on the doors and on the seats.
Yeah. So it's not just on the seats, it's actually on the door cards as well, and in the rear seats and on the rear door cards as well.
And I mean, I really love that fact, and it's kind of like a tigery kind of look, if you could say, like with the orange.
And that is what excites the inner 4-year-old in all men. Oh,
absolutely.
Some of the XR6 models, and actually in most of the Ford Falcon models, not in your car, but in some of the models, we found that the roof lining was a bit of a problem in terms of it sagging after quite a, you know, well, they're older cars. But, you know, the roof lining was a problem in some of the other. Not in your car, this is beautiful. But this is a problem in some of the XR6s, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, as they get on, and I mean, every car has their cons, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
But I've noticed a lot of the XR6s do have that roof sag after a while. And it does get quite bad. Mine, that is another thing that when I bought it, I straight away looked at. So I saw that it was all nice and clean, all wrapped, you know, like tight against the roof liner. And so it complements the car a lot, not having that issue straight up.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, Dylan, you've just chucked a Yui here because you took a wrong turn. That's okay. But I've noticed, and you've actually brought this up as well, that for a sedan, it is a bigger car. It's not a small car by any means. But the turning circle on this, pretty impressive. And look, we are on wider roads, understandably, but it's not like you're in a big 4x4 or a huge SUV where you're having to do 3-point turns on every road. This is got quite a tight turning circle for what is a large sedan.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've had smaller cars and I've had an SUV, as you very well know.
Yeah, you had the RAV4, didn't you?
Yeah, correct. And I mean, that turning circle in itself was pretty good. But even the salesman who sold me this car, because he drove it before I did, just to get us to a good location, he actually pointed that out as well and did the whole turning circle thing like I did with you.
Yeah, it's obviously very noticeable, and I've driven some small cars, man. Probably the smallest I've driven is my very first car, which is the Nissan Cube. That thing had a small turning circle, smaller than this, yes, but this isn't far behind, and this is a much bigger car.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of length and just width, you know, like against the Cube, it's actually quite impressive.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive, man, and I'm a huge fan of that. One other thing that's caught my eye, which I think is freaking awesome, you've got a button here. You want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so most cars, you know, don't really have this feature, but for some reason Ford have added it in where I can just press a button and traction control is off. Now you might ask why that could be important, and I mean, if you're taking it to the track or if, you know, you're going dirt roads or something, the traction control really limits what the car can do.
Yep.
Because it will actually shut down power.
Yeah, and that's obviously to make it safer on the road. But you know, we live in South Australia, which is home to the biggest racetrack in Australia. And a lot of car enthusiasts love to use that track, and so you would want to be able to easily switch that on and off for those track days, which South Australians who like cars inevitably go to.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just the thing of, you're barely ever going to really use it, but at least when you're going to, it's not as hard as some of the other cars. I had a AU as my first car, and to turn that off, you actually had to do a whole lot with your wipers and stuff like that to actually turn it off.
Yeah.
A little kind of cheat code.
That is simple. It is one button. It is right there. It is a big button. You can't miss it, It's impressive. So it makes it easy, and this is all easy to use. My Renault, which I'm currently driving at the moment, is one of the most complicated dashes to use, The button you think would be the big one for volume is not the one for volume, but for tuning the radio station. There's this tiny little stalk of a button to change the volume, which if you hit a bump too hard, your thing will smash into and turn off the whole thing, and then you have to start from scratch again. This is, it has writing on it that you can understand. Loud, menu, FM, AM. There's like 5 buttons on here. A child could learn how to use this, So it is simple, They've obviously designed it in a way that you don't have to be an engineer to understand how to use it.
It is very user-friendly, you could call.
Absolutely,
and I mean, even with all the buttons you press, your display up here tells you everything you're doing. So in your top left corner, you've got, your AC, and then you got your time and you got your radio. It's all, very visible.
And all easy to use. So Dylan, you have a couple of 10% off codes for us.
I definitely do. So as you'll probably see in the video, I've got a few stickers around. So I've gone to Dope as Vinyl.
Yep.
And they're actually supporting me, and I'm an ambassador for them. So I've got a discount for them, which is Quigs15.
Fantastic.
Which will get your subscribers some discount on some stickers.
Link in the description.
I've also got another one, which are Plates R Us. So they do little license plates like that.
That's awesome, man.
And I can do the same discount for you, which is also Quigs15 for that one, or that orange XR6 guy.
Fantastic. Link in the description. Dylan, it's been absolutely amazing, man. I think I've fallen in love with this car. I can see why you like it. It looks amazing. It drives amazing. A lot of plastic, but hey, when you're the driver, does that really matter?
Oh, absolutely not. It's all about the comfort of the ride.
Guys, like the video because it was an awesome video. Leave a comment down below of what car you want us to do next. Subscribe to keep updated with our builds and more pros and cons videos. I'm Jayzcee, this is Dylan. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.